The first scene begins with a 10-year-old girl named Opal, who has recently relocated to Naomi, Pennsylvania with her father, Bob. Bob is a devout Christian who has been assigned as the head priest of the town church. In one of his routine prayers, Opal storms inside and joins everyone. Soon, she prays to God for a good companion because she is lonely in the new city and the other kids at church are not friendly to her. She also misses her mother and longs to see her soon. In the next scene, Opal and her father are at home, where Opal looks through some pictures and reminisces about her old friends. Seeing this, her father advises her to get used to Naomi because they will be living there from now on. The next morning, Bob leaves a message for Opal to go get some groceries from the nearby Winn-Dixie store. Opal is hesitant, but she has no choice but to agree. While she's shopping, she notices the staff running here and there. A few moments later, she discovers that they are chasing a dog away from the store. After destroying the groceries, the dog jumps over the store owner, prompting him to call the pound. While everyone stares at the dog in confusion and horror, Opal suddenly steps forward and claims ownership of the dog. She does so as she is an animal lover and cannot see the poor dog being taken away. To make her claim strong, she even calls the dog Winn-Dixie and takes it with her after apologizing to the store owner for the mess. Surprisingly, the dog also appears to be content to accompany her. Opal returns back home and informs her father of the dog. Initially, Bob strictly forbids her from keeping the dog, but since Opal is a stubborn child, he eventually agrees. The next day, we see Opal having a good time with Winn-Dixie, but they also make a mess, which causes the neighbor, Mr. Alfred, to complain to Bob. Later at night, Opal sits with Winn-Dixie and talks to him about her mother. She tells him that she'd never met her mother because she was too young when she abandoned her. Meanwhile, her father enters the room, and Opal inquires about her mother. However, he doesn't tell her anything, and instead asks her to go to sleep. The next morning, Opal and her father leave Winn-Dixie at home and head out to post some church-related posters. When they return back home, they discover that Winn-Dixie has made a complete mess of the house. As a result, Bob punishes the dog by keeping him outside during the day. However, when it's night, he allows the dog inside. This suggests that even he has started liking the dog. In the following scene, Opal and Winn-Dixie are walking down the street when Winn-Dixie stops by a pet shop. Both of them enter the store and meet the store owner named Otis. Opal requests that the store owner provide her with a job in his store so that she can buy a belt for Winn-Dixie. Meanwhile, the store's parrot, who isn't friendly with dogs, starts playing with Winn-Dixie. Otis looks confused for a while, but Opal convinces him for the job. On the other hand, Mr. Alfred orders Bob to get rid of the dog, or else they must leave the accommodation provided to them by the church. Having no options left, Bob contacts the dog pound, and they arrive the following morning to pick up the dog. Bob agrees to surrender the dog to the pound, but Opal begs him to let Winn-Dixie stay, as he is her only friend. Moved by his daughter's love for the dog, Bob reconsiders his decision and asks to release Winn-Dixie. He also manages to obtain some time from Mr. Alfred in order to solve the problem. The next day, Opal starts working at the pet store, and after work, she spends her time with Winn-Dixie. Later, they come across a library, and Opal enters while asking Winn-Dixie to remain outside. Inside, she meets the owner, Mrs. Franny, who misidentifies Winn-Dixie as a bear and gets terrified. Fortunately, Opal comforts her, and after a while, the dog is let inside. After this, Mrs. Franny shares her bad experience where a bear broke into the library and stole one of her books. Opal also discovers that Mrs. Franny is alone, so she asks if she wants to be friends with her and Winn-Dixie, to which she gladly agrees. Winn-Dixie and Opal's friendship grows stronger and stronger over time. She believes that everything has become better because of Winn-Dixie, and she is no longer lonely. One day, Opal arrives at work to find Otis playing guitar and singing. A few moments later, all of the animals in the pet shop begin to cause havoc. Otis and Opal try to control them, but they're unable to do so. Hence, Opal advises Otis to play his guitar. As soon as he starts playing, surprisingly, all the animals become calm. At the same time, a little girl outside witnesses the entire incident and claims that Otis is a magic man. Following this, Opal asks if the pets broke the cage, to which Otis informs her that he has never locked his pets because, according to him, locking someone up will never make them happy. The next day, Opal and her father head to the church, taking Winn-Dixie with them. Opal confines Winn-Dixie outside the church, but Winn-Dixie doesn't like being alone, so he keeps on barking, causing continuous disturbance in the ongoing prayer. As a result, a fed-up Bob asks Opal to bring the dog inside. After a while, Winn-Dixie notices a rat in one of the corners and begins chasing it, causing havoc in the church. However, everyone finds it amusing and starts enjoying the moment. In the following scene, Winn-Dixie flees to an abandoned area and Opal pursues him. In her search for Winn-Dixie, she meets a blind elderly woman named Gloria. Initially, Opal is terrified as she's heard that Gloria is a witch. But after speaking for a while, she realizes that she is a nice and humble person. They begin talking, and Opal shares everything about herself because she's always desired to be heard. Gloria also pays close attention to Opal and makes her feel good. Later that night, a thunderstorm begins, and Winn-Dixie runs here and there because he appears to have a phobia of thunderstorms. Following the thunderstorm, both father and daughter console Winn-Dixie and decide not to leave him alone in the storm. After that, Opal asks her father about her mother again, and this time he gives some details. He claims that her mother looked exactly like Opal and was a joy to be around. She was a good runner, but a terrible cook. However, she left him because she despised being a priest's wife. As time passes by, Opal begins to spend more time with her elder friends, Otis, Gloria, and Mrs. Franny. One day, she walks into Otis's store and discovers a police officer harassing Otis for no apparent reason. When the policeman sees Opal, he takes her outside to inquire about Otis. But a few moments later, the pets bother him, causing him to flee the scene. After work, Opal and Winn-Dixie head to Gloria's house. On her way, she's bullied by some city boys who claim Otis is a retired criminal. However, Opal ignores them and continues on her way. Soon, she approaches Gloria and asks if she's heard anything about Otis, to which Gloria replies yes. She then leads her to a tree that has many bottles hung on it. Gloria tells her that she hangs a bottle every time she makes a mistake, and as a result, people outside perceive her as a witch. She also claims that she should judge Otis based on his singing and his musical abilities, rather than on what they don't know. Later, Opal visits Mrs. Franny, who tells her that sadness is created by oneself when someone close to them is separated. Opal is then reminded of Gloria and realizes that Naomi is like a big mistake tree, and that everyone is like a bottle floating in the wind, alone and empty. She eventually understands why Gloria hung the bottles in the tree. The next day, Opal sits down with Otis in the store and finds out that he was once imprisoned. On inquiring, Otis responds that he has always loved music, and one day when he was playing his guitar in the park, thinking that people would enjoy the music, the police accused him of disturbing the peace. He resisted the police officer's attempt to seize his guitar, and as a result, he was locked up. Hearing this, Opal finally understands why Otis made friends with the animals. Later, Opal and Winn-Dixie come across the city boys playing baseball, and Winn-Dixie joins in on the fun. Surprisingly, the boys let her play and become good friends, all thanks to Winn-Dixie. The group even manages to have some fun with the same police officer. The next day, Opal is talking to Gloria when she comes up with an idea to throw a summer party so that everyone around her can share joy and forget their sorrows. Initially, Gloria refuses to host the party at her home, but Opal and Winn-Dixie somehow manage to convince her. They then start cleaning the house, prepare food, and also decorate the place. Opal invites all of her friends, including Mrs. Franny, Otis, her father, and Mr. Alfred to the party. This time, Mr. Alfred does not appear to have any complaints about Winn-Dixie. At the party, Opal introduces Mr. Alfred to Mrs. Franny, and the two get along well. Opal then introduces Gloria to her new friends. Gradually, everyone except her father arrives at the party and introduces themselves to one another. Following that, they all gather to begin the party at Gloria's garden. But just then, another thunderstorm occurs. Everyone grabs their food and beverages and runs inside. Meanwhile, Otis summons Opal and hands her the dog's belt for which she has been working in the store. As soon as she notices the belt, she learns that Winn-Dixie is missing and realizes he is afraid of thunderstorms. As a result, she becomes concerned and decides to look for her dog. Everyone tries to stop her, but she refuses to listen and runs outside in the rain. In the next scene, a distressed Opal rushes to her father for assistance, but he tells her to get inside because it's raining. However, Opal ignores his request and goes in search of Winn-Dixie. Left with no options, Bob also follows her in the pursuit. The duo search far and wide amidst the pouring rain, but they are still unable to locate Winn-Dixie. Tired, Bob asks Opal to return home, but the latter yells at her father, accusing him of always giving up. She also claims that he must have given up on her mother, to which he claims that he did everything he could to stop her, but failed. Furthermore, he tells her that he adores Winn-Dixie as much as she does. Following this, they resume their search, but are still unable to find Winn-Dixie. As a result, both of them return to the party. Opal is praying for Winn-Dixie in the garden when her new friends approach her and take her inside. They all listen to Otis's music and sing together. A few moments later, they hear some barking noises, and soon Winn-Dixie appears. Opal and the others are overjoyed to see him, and as a result, they all begin to enjoy the party happily. Finally, Opal no longer feels empty or alone because she has so many companions, and she believes it is all because of Winn-Dixie.